Hello?
We're broadcasting now.
Okay, great. How's everyone doing?
Great. I'm looking forward to this meeting here.
Excellent. All right, Jared, you want to start us off?
Well, I guess the forum. You got to declare the forum. We'll go through the agenda here. If we have
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Great. Forum, any additions and approval. Then I'll jump right into the admin report for you. Which is I want to get into my first one officially. So yeah.
All right. It looks like all the members are present. So I am declaring that there is a quorum for us to move forward. Any additions to the agenda? Hearing none. Sorry about that, folks. Just getting to. All right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Chair moved to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, moved and properly second. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. All right, the vote is unanimous. Minutes are approved, no changes. Thank you all very much. Now we move to the administrator's report.
Thank you, Chair. So just to start off with some announcements and important meetings that we attended. One, I just want to, September 19th was National Voter Registration Day. And, you know, it's celebrated as a nonpartisan event held each year on the third Tuesday of September. You know, we have, you know, promoted it on social media. I was doing a little bit of historical research on voter registration and found that the first time it was ever mentioned in the state of Maryland was with the 1864 Constitution. So that was the first time ever. And the first law that was ever passed was in the 1865 General Assembly. So that was a little tidbit of information. I just wanted to thank Archives for helping me with that in searching their site and digging up the information with me on that. And, you know, you think that this doesn't have an impact, but it does. So on our online voter registration database for people to register, we saw an approximately a 475% increase just on that day alone. I mean, it was phenomenal about the number of applications that were received on that day. So it does have an impact, these types of days. So it was a worthwhile endeavor and very happy to participate in it and looking forward to doing it on a yearly basis. One of the things as the new state administrator, I've made it a goal to visit every local board and their warehouses by November. Hopefully by November, I'm doing it right now. I've visited 9, Anne Arundel, Howard, Wycomico, Worcester, Dorchester, Cecil, Hartford, Frederick, and Charles. They've been all very enlightening. And one of the biggest needs that I've seen so far was the standardization and regulations are needed for warehouse spaces. Everyone their warehouse is either at capacity or near capacity or beyond. And we have been Katie and I have been doing trying to increase the lines of communications between the locals and the state so that we're all functioning as one unit. And so I think that it's been well received so far, these visits, and I'm looking forward to completing the others in October and in November. One of the things that I also made it a priority of me is to help at least push back on some mal, and disinformation, because I believe that is a threat to our electoral process and administrations. And one of the recent news stories have been really focusing on the fact that that information is still prevalent and spreads a lot faster where in communities where English isn't their first language. So we have now started to expand our efforts into those areas to include Spanish and Chinese language to battle back, or at least to combat some of the disinformation out there. And I just wanted to thank Delegate Chi for help facilitating the translation of terms in Chinese for us. A couple of meetings that we attended. The chair, Ms. Barry, and we attended a Ways and Means Committee meet and greet in Dorchester County. It was by invitation of the chair, Chair Vanessa Atterbury. It was a pleasant meeting, and we discussed the vision and direction of the state board. On September 15th, Ms. Barry and I went to the Mayo meeting in Frederick. It was also attended by others in the agency as well. So it was quite a good meeting there and moving forward with it. As I've been saying, the new hire, maybe I should have introduced her right off the bat, was Catherine Barry. She's the new deputy administrator. I'm pleased that she has accepted and has started. She started on September 6th. And Katie, do you want to say a few words? We already have your bio up on the screen here in the admin report. So did you want to say anything? Because
Thank you. Yeah, I am looking forward to working with the board in this new capacity. As the bio mentions, I do have vast local board of election experience in Maryland. I've worked with the General Assembly for nearly a decade as well. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody in this capacity. And please reach out to me if there's a time that you can't reach Jared, and we are working to come up to speed and get our team all together and organized. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Another new hire is Cyril, or better known as CJ Comp. He's the director of special projects. He has a PhD and from the University of Georgia, and he was also a person that came and worked in the Board of Elections down in Athens, Georgia. So he has a found passion for elections, and he looking forward to helping us with the next election going forward. So I'm very excited with having him on board. Natasha Walker has been promoted to the acting director of the voting systems. She is filling the vacancy left by Shafiq. And so we're making sure that any vacancies that are occurring, we're filling immediately to fill out the team as quickly as possible for the upcoming election in May. And one of the other ones too is Verona Williams. She's going to start in October 4th as the new director of budget and finance. She has been working over corrections as the chief fiscal officer since 2014 and has provided supervision of all the financial operations over there. So it's going to be a great fit, and we're slowly getting the team together here. I've also included a little bit of some of what's happening with some hires at the locals as well for your knowledge, because we do have salary authority over the locals. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of what's going on there. And also the last one is Cassie. She is the new senior assistant state prosecutor over at the state prosecutor's office. And her entire focus is going to be on elections integrity. And so that's going to be our new point person there. And she has quite an impressive resume for the state prosecutor's office. So I know state prosecutor made an excellent hire there. She's very interested in also learning a lot about election laws, especially in Maryland. There was an election directors meeting on September 21st. And, we just kind of reviewed upcoming action items for the 2024 election upcoming there. And we'll be keeping you abreast of any of those meetings there. And now I will turn it over to Melissa if they wanted to reach out on any of the election reform and management topics. And
Thanks, Jared. Marianne sends her regrets. She was unable to attend today, but she has provided a ton of information in the admin report. I'm happy to answer any questions. I guess just a couple of the highlights. Marianne and Crystal McGinn wrapped up the production of a new sample ballot, and we will have that for you to take a look at the biennial conference. We're really excited about it. Worked closely with the Center for Civic Design. Election judge recruitment is well underway. Marianne's got some numbers, some of the more recent numbers in there for you, as well as the preparation for training. I know there were a couple requests last meeting to take a peek at the online election judge training, and I do believe that we just completed our last kind of go round to make sure that that's as perfect as it's going to get. So we can share that link with you in the next week or so. If you're still interested, just let us know who wants to look at it, and we'll send it around. I think that's probably okay. Well, I'll just send it. How about I send it to the whole group and do with it as you'd like. And then again, happy to answer any questions, but she has a ton of great info in the admin report.
thank you, Melissa. I just want to also point out about the election judge recruitment and the bill that was passed, House Bill 1200. It not only increased the pay of election judges, but included the bonus of returning judges. And I just wanted to highlight what is going on in Frederick, just as one of the counties during my visits out there, that right now, 81% of the judges that have been recruited so far have been returning judges. So I believe it has had an impact on helping us retain judges. So just wanted to highlight that and making sure that working with the General Assembly and getting these bills passed has helped us a little bit here. We'll now make sure we'll turn it over to voter registration. And Brett, do you want to give us an update on what's happening in the Department of Voter Registration?
Thanks, Chair. Sure will. Good afternoon, everybody. As Melissa said with the electoral reform, we have a lot of good information in the administrator's report for this meeting, so I won't go over everything, but we do want to highlight a few things. We had a successful new release of MD Voters occur last weekend and went smoothly with some enhancements to candidacy and campaign finance, as well as our election judge module, sort of in tandem with the election judge pay that we were referring to previously. On the surrendered license mailer, our cancellation numbers continue to increase on that. We are over 1,100, which is double or over double the number that was reported in the last meeting. So again, seeing good success from that particular venture. Lastly, just wanted to highlight that per board member Weissman's request, we've included some additional statistics related to the MVA transactions that we receive, analyzing month to month. So that particular row there is looking at the difference between July and August 2023, and then also looking at the same month in the previous year. So the second row there being a comparison between August of 22 and August of 23. So those are the items I wanted to highlight today. Are there any questions for myself or the voter registration division?
Go ahead, Jake. I'll go next.
Go ahead, Carlos.
Okay. Thank you, Brett. The ERIC files that we compare with regards to the SSA death files, are those looking at, are they providing us like a list that goes back a period of time that we then compare against our database? Or do they just look at, like, for a period of time, let's say it's 1 month or 2 months, the people who passed away during that time period?
So, right. So we're receiving this report every other month, and I believe it would be all of the people that have passed away within that previous time period, but I can certainly double check on that to make sure I'm correct.
Yeah, and I'd be interested, just in case something's fallen through the cracks, would it be possible to compare the entire database, however far back it goes, that ERIC has, with our database of registered voters?
So, okay, if I'm understanding this correctly, you're saying the aggregate of information that we have received from Eric over time to then be compared against our current voter registration database. Is that correct?
Correct. I don't know if I'd look at the files that we've received for them, or do they have a database that goes back 10 years or 20 years? And can we just ask them for that and compare it electronically to our voter registration records?
I see what you're saying. So yes, I can inquire on that. I do believe they have some sort of records retention schedule that they follow as well. But yes, we can definitely inquire on that one.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Paradise, first off, thank you for the chart. I think it's really illuminating. I hate to ask this, but at some point, would we be able to get this over the entire year, just so we can start to better understand the pattern of the month-to-month kind of changes?
I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Wiseman, because I was going to actually ask you about that specifically, if this was kind of the format you were looking for. So yes, absolutely. So we will do a full prior 13-month analysis for you all to see. Yeah, I'm assuming would chart form be desirable as well?
Yeah, chart form is great. If you can throw it in a graph as well, because at least for me, I love pictures. But but this is great. I appreciate your responsiveness.
Perfect. Yes, and that won't be a problem. So that will definitely be included in the next administrator's report.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ray. And please add color. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes.
May I?
Janet, go ahead.
We're not trying to overburden you, but one thing that struck me when I saw the change from the same month in the previous year is when there's an election, when it's an election year versus an off year, I think the change year to year may not be as significant as from the last election year. So to me, having a 2-year change might be more revealing.
You bring up a great point, Ms. Middleton, and I completely agree with you. So what we can do, and this won't be a burden to us whatsoever, we can do the 13-month look back in a chart, month-to-month form, and then yes, we'll have another column to compare 2 years prior to the same month, because I completely agree with you. Yes, the data is much different during an election year.
All right. I'm not sensing any other commentary. Oh, Jarrett?
Well, I was going to say, there's no more questions. I'll go to the candidacy and campaign finance.
All right, please do.
Basically, right now, we have 37 candidates that have been filed at the state board. Public financing, Baltimore City's commission is still waiting for 5 more appointments, but they have a quorum, so it can continue. And right now, to date, we have 1 candidate participating in the programs, so that's moving forward. And board member Weissman, I also gave you a chart on the web activity and for everyone there as well. And below is the enforcement actions that were closed during the month of August and who paid. Most notably, as we went through it, the biggest one was, of course, with a out-of-state and PAC and a participating organization entity, the 1199 SEIU NYS Political Action Fund for failure to timely file disclosure reports. So that is the candidacy and campaign finance briefing there. And now I'll move on to the poll books, just to follow up from our last meeting there. On September 8th, basically, after receiving the recommendation from the poll book project management team, project management, technical management, and the LBE subcommittee, it was my decision to utilize the current existing poll books for the 2024 election cycle, and that will include both the primary and the general. This was based upon the initial test results of the final e-poll tab Merlin Centerpoint build that was delivered on August 25th. They have shown quite a good improvement there, but it did not meet still the requirements of a minimum viable product suitable for statewide use in a Maryland election. This decision here does not mean the project will be abandoned. The expectation is for DemTech to continue delivering new releases towards a viable solution that meets all of Maryland requirements. And we will continue to work with DemTech to ensure that it will be configured with the new hardware and software that is shipped to the local boards for integration and mock testing as soon as possible. Though we're disappointed with the fact that we couldn't use the new poll book solution for the 24 election, we are still, in the process of making sure that it's going to be complete, tested, and accepted before the end of the calendar year for ready for use in 25 and in 26. So that is the update on the poll books for the board. One of the newer features here on the admin report here is I'm going to tell you a little bit about.
I think
Yes.
1 second before we move on. I think you have a question, Jake.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chair. And just, if you don't mind, Ms. Marinis, just briefly going back, couple of things. First off, great job on the hiring so far. I've heard a whole lot of praise from Ms. Berry even before she started, and just continuous excitement for you coming on board. So great job there. Just a couple quick questions, Mr. Marinis. I wanted on that chart, and thank you for sending it. It's great. I'm assuming visitors is unique visitors.
Yes.
Okay, so we're averaging, I guess, for the month of August of this year, 178,000 unique visitors to 468,000 to Chris, and 178,000 to, BCDS. What does that stand for?
That's the business contribution disclosure system. So that's the Title 14.
Title 14.
So that's Title 14, which is the people that government contracts of $200,000 or more, or employ a lobbyist with compensation of $500 or more. So that's that they file on that system there. I will double check about the uniqueness of it, or rather it's just a visitor is every a unique hit to it, in a sense, like from different.
We also have it's in this chart. So,
yeah, but I guess it was like rather than just being 400,000, but I'll double check. But I believe it was supposed to be every unique visitors.
Great. If we have it, I don't know if our IT system categorizes this way, and we can get it for just the standard State Board of Elections website, not just the campaign finance websites. I think it'd be really helpful to better understand when people are on the State Board of Election websites, where they are going, like what information they are looking for. I don't know if that's something we have the ability to do, but if you could.
I'll double check, because they're in two different sites, great. But I'll double check with our IT staff, which is very good. So I know that they make updates on it, and they'll probably track. They have the ability probably to either get software to track it or something to that effect. So we'll take a look at it.
Awesome. Two more things, and then I'll be quiet for at least a minute. Number one, just wanted to thank you for the transparency and explaining on the poll books, both now but also over the last month as you've come into this position. It's been great. I do want to ask you were talking about going around to the locals at the beginning, just what your biggest takeaways so far. Anything that came up multiple times, or anything that's kind of resonating with you? Really, the warehouse. The warehouse issue. I think the biggest thing is when they have, because they have to go to the counties. And one of the things that I want to do, and I've reached out to MACO as well, is to talk to the budget officers at the county level, so that they're going to be aware of certain issues or bills that will be coming down the pipeline, so that they can budget accordingly for it. But I think sometimes people say, when you say a voting system, they think of the old lever machines, and you can just stick it in any sort of warehouse or any sort of conditions. These are computers, basically. These are high-tech scanners
they are, they need to make sure that they're temperature controlled. There has to be humidity control, and the storage has to be in a good place, because otherwise you might get mold or other potential issues with it. Additionally, you want to, as we grow as a population, we're getting, the equipment grows with it. So we have more early voting centers, more polling places because of everything else. And so the space really shrinks quickly for them to move around. And some of them do not have enough space then to facilitate training at their locations. I've seen one where they had to basically move all the equipment out of one room into another room to do a training and then move it back into that room to push it out. So I think one of my biggest takeaways is to kind of help standardize and look at maybe adopting regulations with the locals on the same tiered level that early voting population is, because as a county can grow, then that they grow with more early voting sites, and therefore there's more equipment, and therefore the warehouse would have to grow as well. So we're putting that together, and I'm looking forward to kind of making sure that that's one of my biggest takeaways. And even the ones that are in good shape now, look at it and say in 5 years, in 6 years, we're not going to be. So
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and that's it? Jake?
No.
I thought it was another. Okay, good to go. Jared, going
Mr.
into...
Chair, I think Ms. Millinson has a question.
Yes.
Oh, I got you. Thank you. Janet?
Thanks, Jake. One thing, I mostly want to talk about poll books, but following up on the warehouse thing, I assume in addition to climate control and that kind of thing, that you also want to standardize security and chain of custody procedures as well.
Of course. Yes.
Okay. And also in terms of canvas locations, because one aspect of that is there may be increased interest from the public or whoever in coming and monitoring the canvas. So that also has to be, accessible and so forth. Regarding the poll books, I admire how you have dealt with the extensions and the, failure to meet the deadline and just making the decision what to do for 2024. Going forward, though, is there a need to rethink any of our requirements, such as everything needing to be in wireless communication on election day in the polling places? Is there more information we can get on some of these subsidiary contractors who are working with Demtech and getting a lot of money for, I think it's, staffing or something? I mean, there's a lot of money being spent that was allocated via the Board of Public Works and did not go past the board for approval. And as part of the transparency, whether some of this may need to be discussed in closed session, I don't know. But do we need to rethink anything rather than just stay on the same path going forward?
So right now, what I can say is that it is a contract. Demtech has, knew the RFP walking into this and said that they would be able to meet all the requirements necessary for the contract moving forward. And at that point here, we need to make sure that they are meeting the requirements that they said they are going to meet. So I think that's where I'd like to leave that. And, we are still working with Demtech to making sure that we can get the minimum viable product and, making sure that everyone is going to have it. I am looking forward to having a workable solution by the end of this year with Demtech on this. They have made great strides in working with us to do this. It is disappointing that it is not. It did not meet the absolute last deadline to get us through for 2024, but we will be ready in 2025 for use, and definitely in 2026. So that I would like to leave it. Okay.
Is there anything else, Janet? You good to go?
Well, a couple other procurement type questions, but he hasn't officially gotten to that yet. So
Okay, well, definitely we'll wait. He was headed there. So
I'm on deck for that.
Thank you. All right,
Sure.
Go ahead.
So I guess right now for procurement, this is also a new little portion of the admin report, and this is also stuff that we will be talking with the county boards of budget directors as well. Right now we're in development of a contract for basically for review with various categories for IT and warehouse support and poll book and MD voter support. This is a small business reserve designated contract. Right now, we have ones that are under review, which was the mail-in ballot application printing request. So we've received bids and is now under review. And recently, we just awarded 2 contracts for Clear Ballot to provide post-election audits, and to R.R. Donnelly for the provision ballot application printing. And that's a Maryland-based print shop as well. So that it's keeping it in-house. And we've had also some options renewed as well, most notably for our voter education program with KO Public Affairs. So that's it right now. If there's any, I know if there's more questions, I'll be happy to answer them. So.
Mr. Chair, may I speak on this?
Oh, sure. I just didn't see your hand raised or anything. So yeah, you're good to go. Yeah.
Okay. Clear Ballot we've used before. Just let me throw out there that it's not as valid for auditing ballot marking device produced ballots, because you don't have a voter verified ballot to compare it to. The provisional ballot application printing, isn't R.R. Donnelly, didn't they used to do the yellow pages? It's a familiar name.
I don't know. I haven't gotten a yellow pages
I know.
a long time there, right? Everything's on the phone now, so.
And I collect antiquarian books, so I did notice big jumps in the option thing. Separately from the printing, is there a plan to revise or examine the content of the provisional ballot application form so we can get a little more information on why people are voting provisionally? And, we're trying to get that number down. So is there any kind of plan for some sort of work group or whatever, again, before you go out and cut down a few more forests, is there a plan to reevaluate the content?
Do you want me to?
So we do have some categories already there. Melissa, would you like to, I think the categories are already on there. So if you could just explain what categories we have, and then from there, thank you.
Sure. Actually, the provisional ballot application is going to look totally different this cycle. We've taken the 2 applications and put them into one, and also taken a step back and looked at some of the pain points that we had going through the provisional review canvas process. So it will look very different. We have a group internally that is part voter registration, part election reform, part mail-in ballots, and lots of local board input, trying to work through why we have so many provisionals and making sure that even if we still end up with provisionals, we have an accurate reflection on why they are voting provisional. So we hope to have better outcomes this year in terms of gathering data, but also just making the process much more understandable to our voters.
Okay, that's good. And I think I heard you also include the mail-in ballot application form as something else you're looking at. Was that one of the things you listed, or?
We're working with the mail-in voting team, very small team, to include a lot of our provisional voters are people who have registered to vote by mail. And so looking at that as well. And we do have the current, I'm not sure if Jen is on, we do have the current mail-in ballot request form online. There she is. Jen, I'll put it to you.
Sure. The current form is online as a PDF, should someone want to download it or do it that way. It also directs, it's in the same location that directs you that you can do a request a mail-in ballot online entirely, no need for paper. And then as required by a 2021 law, we will be mailing out paper applications this year to all voters who hadn't previously signed up. We've made small improvements to that from what we did in 2022. Again, also encouraging people that it's easier, probably easier on them and definitely easier on our locals to do that online, but it will include a return postage page envelope so people can, if they choose to elect that, mail it back to us, and that's how you could sign up for mail-in voting. So those will start going out in January.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there any other questions? I'm sorry. Yeah, Jake, okay. There was
Thank
a
you,
little
Mr.
delay there.
Chair. First off, that was fascinating, and I'm trying to avoid making a joke about yellow pages right now. Mr. Demeritus, can I just ask the Election Support Resources Task Order Request for Proposals, I guess TORP, once it's finalized, the director sends documents and attachments to do it for review, and then issues a variety of labor categories for IT and other support. How is that then overseen and supervised by SB?
Project management team then oversees it and supervises it. And we have a project. And
there are folks on the project management that are working with the different IT contractors.
Right, exactly.
Gotcha. And do we know what the overall spending on the TORF will be?
That I don't have in front of me. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
No.
All right, thank you. And you have another section. Oh, I'm sorry, Carlos? Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a dollar limit above which it comes in front of the board?
No. I mean, I guess right now I've just been doing some of the bigger contracts for the board on that. I would say some of the smaller stuff, I'm not going to bring in, we bought so many pens or required this or that stuff, but these are some of the bigger operations that will affect basically operations or something that, would be noteworthy, or things that would actually go in front of the BPW, I think is kind of like basically the standard in which I'm using for right now. If it goes in front of BPW, I would, let the board know, or potentially go in front of BPW.
Thank you.
And so that was a great question. I recognize you there, Vice Chair, but that's a great question, Carlos, because this is the first for us. And I'm really excited about this for us to have access to this information because I don't believe it's ever occurred before. So if need be, I think we're here to assist the SBE with how they are procuring resources going forward. So we give a little bit more insight instead of just oversight. All right, Vice Chair.
Yeah, I just was going to speak to this same subject. This is something that we had pushed for in the past. There also has been legislation that did not come all the way through, but they were looking at like a $200,000 threshold. I just applaud our current state administrator for bringing already several items to the board, I think that's very, very good, and I think that's the direction we should be moving. And certainly DPW is a great standard. Like I said, the legislation has contemplated $200,000. No one on this board wants to talk about your paper clips. So, but the larger things that, quite frankly, should have some oversight and also have the potential where we'll get questions on the outside. And thank you for moving in that direction. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Now up is Project Management Office, Keith.
Good afternoon,
Thank you.
board members. My name is Keith Ross, and just among the other many things that we're working on, the report has some of the items that I wanted to highlight. If there are any questions, I'm ready to entertain them. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Keith. And the last two, which is local board news, I just wanted to basically start highlighting some of the things that are going on in the LBEs. I think that it's important to make sure that the state board is aware of what's going on out there. Right now, Baltimore City is preparing for its local redistricting, so that was it's important, so that they're now getting ready. The mayor had just recently proposed a redistricting plan, so that's we're ready for once that's finalized, the city will be ready to implement it and to make sure that redistricting occurs. And a couple of places right now, there's like I said, bunch of counties are relocating their offices and or warehouses. So, we're making sure that we're working with them and making sure that they have, that they're still can function during their times of moves at this point here. So, and all the counties are actively working on making sure the recruiting and election judges and outreach efforts, as I highlighted earlier, and the voter reform division was highlighting too with that. And at this one here, since the last administrative report, we have not exercised any of the delegated duties that was exercised. So with that, I have submitted the admin report.
All right, thank you very much. Jerry, with that, any other questions concerning the admin's report? All right. Now, with regards to approval of final regulations.
No, we got to go to AG.
The AG's report?
AG's report. You can give me a little bit of a break here. Dan's going to give me a little bit of a break.
Assistant Attorney General's report, and then moving into approval of final regulation.
I may have completely missed it, and forgive me if I did. Did the board approve its minutes from the previous meeting? Okay.
Yes.
That's done. Assistant Attorney General's report, you have it. It's two cases. The first is the Gibson case. I think my report said last time that on the board's last meeting was August 29th, that the appellee's brief was due on August 30th. Appellee's brief was being written by the Office of Attorney General on behalf of the state. All appellees were signing on to it. I'm happy to report that is exactly what happened. It was filed on the 30th by all appellees, so one unified brief was filed. The appellants, the other side of the case, has until October 31st to file a reply brief. There is no oral argument scheduled, so after October 31st, whenever the Fourth Circuit decides the case, the Fourth Circuit will decide the case. I'm hopeful we'll get a decision sooner rather than later, but that is up to the Fourth Circuit to provide for us. The second case, the Johnson case, which has actually been on the AAG report since December, earlier even, I'm happy to report this is the last meeting it will be on the report. The Federal District Court scheduled about a week ago, a teleconference between counsel for the state, counsel for Governor Hogan, and the plaintiff in that case. And the plaintiff agreed in that hearing, in that teleconference hearing, to voluntarily withdraw the case with prejudice. The case is therefore over, the order issued, the Johnson case is finished and will drop off after this meeting. If there are any questions about those two cases, I'm happy to answer them. Yeah, Mr. Weissman.
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question for Mr. Corporate. I do have one more question for the administrator. I just don't want to give him a break.
Okay.
It's nothing to do with you.
Yeah, well, we definitely, he's up next anyway, but is there, so that we can move on, is there any questions of the AG report? Okay, seeing none, we are going to move on to approval of final regulations, but prior to that, Jake, if you'd like to address the administrator, please do.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Chairman, really quickly, there was a report that I read over the weekend about the high turnover of election directors throughout the country. I know we had at least one turnover in a local office when Mr. Demarinis brought Ms. Berry over to the state. That's obviously a good thing, but it was about the concerns with the threats to election directors and others. And I was just wondering, Mr. Demarinis, do you know what sort of turnover we've experienced in Maryland? How concerned we should be here about that?
So yes, I mean, we've had some turnover at the local level. Most notably, Montgomery County, Prince George's have had some turnover. Carroll. But one of the things is that I'm working closely with Mayo in order to mitigate this. And one of the new initiatives that I have talked to David Garris, the president over there, and consulting with Katie Berry, is we want to implement a mentoring program so that, older, I guess more experienced election directors will then help new election directors to make sure that they're not forgetting anything at the same level. So we're going to try to match people up with, size or location, and create a mentoring program there. We've already kind of, one of the things that we've already implemented, and they already have a committee, which I wanted with Mayo at the last meeting, was a redistricting committee. Because one of the things is also when you have turnover of this, there's not many people that have done a redistricting effort. So making sure, looking ahead now, I mean, yes, it's 7 years in the future, but if we can start documenting it and making sure that it's there and giving as many people confidence, especially the newer election directors in that facility or anybody that has not done a redistricting will be able to look at it, and it's a part of the mentoring program. So those are two big initiatives that I'm working closely with Mayo to help mitigate the turnovers in the future. Additionally, one of the things is that we are looking at trying to revamp is election directors continuing education program at the state board level. It was implemented years ago and then kind of when a turnover, it didn't really continue, but I want to get the continuing education program there so that we make sure that everyone is caught up to speed on the new regulations and procedures. So it's not only making sure mentoring exists, but also making sure that all the existing election board directors are up to speed with that, with the current knowledge. And one of the things, and then finally about addressing the threats, is that I do will try to work closely with the General Assembly. And I know that Senator Kagan is a big cheerleader for trying to push some protections for election directors, and that is a Mayo initiative as well. So, we'll be at the General Assembly making sure that we're addressing that. So basically, at the end here, we're mitigating and addressing as many of those problems as we can, in for 24 and beyond.
Any follow-up to that, Jake?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any other questions concerning that issue? All right, thank you very, very much for your flexibility with that, Mr. Administrator. I truly appreciate that. And as we move forward with the agenda, approval of final regulations. Could you lead us into that, please?
Sure. So the first one is going to be on approval of campaign finance regulations. This deals with online platforms and civil penalties. The proposed changes were adopted at the June 20th meeting. They were published in the Maryland Register, and we had one public comment received, which was from the Campaign Legal Center in support of the proposed changes. They recommend that we include a definition of in the regulations. At this point here, it's not something that needs to be held up. So I recommend that since they were overwhelmingly in support of the regs, and that was the only written comment that we had, that we proceed with the adoption of the proposed regs as drafted. And at a subsequent meeting, I will then add that definition to the regulations to cite to the statute that they want, so that as the statute changes, that definition will change accordingly, and it keeps everything in one place. But this gives it adopted what the intent of the law was for online platforms, and it addresses the court case in a manner that excludes press entities. And so it addresses the Fourth Circuit holding as well, which was the McManus versus Washington Post lawsuit. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but at this point here, I recommend the final adoption of the proposed regs.
With the recommendation of the administrator for this regulation, I really appreciate that. But prior to any comment at this time or motion, I want to clarify my actions as chair is to secure and the members, as well as move through the agenda efficiently and effectively. So with that being said, at this point, we will entertain motions that will be properly second. Without a proper second, the motion dies. With a proper second, we will move into discussion. Upon that time, after discussion, all voices have been heard, we will move to a vote. Okay, and that is on me, and that's how we will move forward. I apologize for any disconcerting or earnest efforts last month that needed to be rescinded because of course, greater minds prevail. But I think we're collectively going to move through this more effectively and efficiently. So on the administrator's recommendation, is there a motion? Jake?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move that we approve these final regulations with the caveat that the administrator added about syncing it with the legislation.
Is there a second? It's been properly moved. Is there a second?
I second.
Is the second? Is there any discussion? Vice Chair? We can't hear you, Vice Chair.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just concerned about what Jake just said. If we vote to be final what has been posted, I don't think we can make changes. I think and it's procedural, and I could be wrong. I'm not against this, voting for this, but if there's a change to be made, I think it has to be republished. Dan, could you speak into that?
It depends on what the change is, but for changes like this, I believe you're right.
Yes. So, right. So
Oh, so
basically
really-
it would be, oh, sorry.
So really, we're either voting for it as it has been published, or we're voting against it, make a change and have to publish it again. And I just want to make sure we're procedurally moving forward correctly. I have personally no problem with these changes. I just want to make sure we're procedurally moving forward correctly.
I appreciate that, Vice Chair. Procedurally, we are at a motion. It has been properly seconded. We are at discussion on this. As it is written without so we are voting as it currently stands.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Administrator, I guess, Mr. Demarinis, my question is taking the AG's opinion there, is your recommendation that we move forward with these regulations as adopted for final, or, okay, then, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to amend my motion just to make a straight passage of these final regulations.
Well, there is a motion that has been properly seconded. We are in discussion. Aside from that, as it stands now, we will take the vote on the motion that has been made. Okay, and then we can also reopen. Well, as it stands now, if it passes, then if it does not pass, if it fails, then I will entertain a second motion.
To just clarify, Mr. Chairman, my original motion included the original suggestion of the administrator after the vice chair's comments and the AG's comments. I just want to amend my original motion to just be a straight vote on the final regulations.
I think his internet froze. Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't hear you, Chair. You're frozen, or you were frozen and then you're speaking again.
Yeah, you guys are frozen for a while. Okay, Jake, I hear what you're saying. So you would like to change your motion. Are we back?
Yeah. I'd just like to amend my motion so it is just a vote to approve the final regulations as written.
As currently written? What's the definition of final?
As currently before us right now.
Being presented.
Yes.
Without the amended language.
Correct.
Okay. We are. So in the discussion, it was highlighted that procedurally, we cannot amend without public comment on the amendment. And therefore, since we have received public comment on the approved final regulation as it stands, we need to take a vote on that. So with that being said, thank you very much, Vice Chair, for leading the way on that procedural recommendation or recognition. Jake, you have the floor to amend your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just motion that we approve the final regulations listed in the agenda, the campaign finance regulations 33.13.21 and 33.18.0102, and the regulations 33.01.01.01, 33.07.11.01 to 02, 33.15.02.01, and 33.15.03.01 to 02.
Thank you. It's been properly moved. Is there a second? Vice Chair.
Seconded.
Thank you very much. It has been seconded. All those in any discussion this time?
Yeah, we're bundling them all together. I'm not quite happy with that. I think some of them need to be separately discussed. specifically,
Well, we're at discussion now, so you're free to discuss whichever you'd like that is part of the motion.
okay,
Janet, are you referring to the elections 33? Could you, I'm sorry, which regs did you motion to approve? 33, 13, 21, and 33, 18?
I motioned the ones that are under item 6 of the agenda.
Right, so it's just
The final regulation.
Right, the final regulations. So we're going to do the campaign finance ones first, which is 33, 13, 21, and 33, 18, 01. That was being discussed.
okay.
And then we'll do the other one next.
I do have a small question about, let's see, 33, 15, 03, 01 about the required polling place plan. And this is just.
That's not on this, that's not on these regulations.
It's under line B of 6. I thought we were lumping these all together.
I think Mr. Weissman would have to amend his
Yeah.
motion again just to handle A and get A done, and then have a
let me do
separate
that if
motion
I
to
may.
do
Yeah.
work on B.
Mr. Chairman,
Can we just withdraw the motion and redo a new motion? How about that? Like,
I'd like to withdraw my motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion, well, there's been a motion to withdraw the motion. Is that second?
yeah.
Is there a second on the motion to withdraw the motion? Thank you very much. Seeing the second, all those in favor of withdrawing the motion? Thank you very much.
Is
Is there a motion to approve the final regulation presented by and recommended by the administrator?
So that would just be 33.13.21 and 33.18.01.02.
Is there a second? Is that a motion? First of all, is that a
Yes.
motion? Thank you.
Second.
It has been properly seconded. All those is there a discussion? And all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. It is unanimously accepted. Truly
Thank you.
appreciate that. Moving on.
All right. Now, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, and Ms. Millinson, I'm just going to motion for all 4 of them, and then I guess we can discuss in that regard if that works for you. But Mr. Chairman, I'd like to motion approval of final regulations 33.01.01.01, 33.07.11.01 to 02, 33.15.01.02.01, and 33.15.03.01 to 02. So that would be the regulations under item 6B of the agenda.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Sure, second.
There has been seconded. Any discussion? Yes, Janet?
I just have a small question about 33.15.03.01, the required polling place plan. Does that just apply to new locations, new or changed locations, or does that have to be submitted for all existing locations?
That would be submitted for all existing locations. So it's a comprehensive plan submitted by each county that includes every election day polling location.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other discussion, question or concern? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please show by raising your hand. Thank you, it is unanimous. Thank you very much. Jared?
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, now we're on to waivers of late fee for Title 13 filers, which is the political committees. In front of you is waivers for 18 committees, and the denials, which the board doesn't have to add any action on. And this is the last batch of entities from the state prosecutor's office that they are no longer seeking to get any of the late fee penalties from, because they're outside the statute of limitations. They either had some issues trying to track down the responsible officers, or that they just, declined to prosecute during that time period here. So we're just basically moving them from our inactive roles now to closed, because they have basically closed them as well at the state prosecutor's office. So with that, I'm presenting them all to you. If there's any individual questions, I'll be happy to answer it. If not, I just recommend the waivers as presented for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Administrator. It is before the board with the recommendation of the administrator to approve as presented the waiver request Title 13. Is there a motion? Jake?
I'd like to move that we approve the waiver request for Title 13.
A motion has been and is properly seconded. All those in favor, please show by raising your hand. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. All approved. Jarrett?
Thank you. And now the next one is for our Title 14 filers waiver. There is only one waiver request to approve there. Basically it was, a reconsideration, and, we recommend that now it can be granted because it's been filed. So with that, with just the one for one approval, and again, we gave the denial for your information, but there's no board action on the denial. So.
All right. Is it your recommendation to approve it as read?
As read, yes.
All right. Thank you very much. There is, it's open for a motion to approve the administrator's recommendation on waiver request Title 14. Vice Chair.
Moved to approve the waiver request for Title 14 as presented.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair, is there a second? Jake? Properly seconded. All those in favor, please. Oh, any discussion? Sorry. All those in favor, please show by raising your hand. All right, you have a unanimous consent. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 11, approval of confidentiality request. Jay?
Yeah, so in front of you was request for confidential voters, and for your approval with that. They have been verified to meet the requirements of the confidential voter status, and they're all three. So I just presented it to you for approval as written.
All right. Is there a motion to accept the administrator's approval for a confidentiality
Mr.
request?
Chairman, I'd like to motion to accept the approval of the confidentiality request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Thank you very much. It is approved. Jarrett, moving on to number 12, discussion of COMAR Regulation 33.03.02.01 B1.
Yes, this was we've been receiving lots of letters that I've been forwarding to the board about this regulation. Most notably, I forwarded the last one to you regarding the Republican Central Committee, Republican State Central Committee, and their opposition to this regulation that was passed back in February. It's just wanted, I believe, the last time I just wanted to make sure that the board members were aware of this and if there was any discussion that they wanted to have on the current state of this COMAR provision. And it involves the electoral process definition for purchasing a voter registration list.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes, sir. Carlos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think I clicked the mute off this time. Thanks for bringing this up. I can't really comment on the legal side of this and whether it complies with the UNVR or not. But I think there's some arguments that I've heard that are pretty compelling that maybe as written, it does not. My concern is more around trust in our system. And I think that's probably one of the greatest threats we have right now is that you've got a decent chunk of the country who doesn't trust our electoral system. And anything that we do to reduce transparency, I think, is going to have a negative effect on trust. I think the statistics are pretty bad. I just saw something recently from Brookings Institute that 56% of Americans have little or no confidence that our elections represent the will of the people, and only 20% feel, quote, very confident in the integrity of the U.S. system. That's not good. And Rasmussen, I think it was 62%, including 45% of Democrats believe that cheating affected the outcome of the election in 2020. Restoring trust is critical. It really is. And I think there's the potential, if we make it illegal for people to go out and verify both the voter rolls and the outcomes of an election, in terms of whether someone had voted or not who they voted for. I think that's going to further erode trust. So I'm concerned about it.
Okay, Jake?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate Mr. Ayala's concerns. And I wasn't on the board when this regulation was passed, I guess 7 months ago. So I'm always bad with math. I do just want to say I feel compelled to say while there are a fair amount of concerns about faith in elections, a lot of them propelled by a variety of media and political figures who are really poisoning some folks with unfounded concerns for their own gain. I do just have to say, and I appreciate what Mr. Ayala said, because those polls are absolutely out there, and it's true we have a lot of work to do. I really just do want to thank this board and the staff of the Board of Elections who works every day to ensure that our elections are as secure as possible and that voters can have complete faith in our elections and the integrity of Maryland's elections. And so I just want to say, I think those concerns need to be heard and need to be discussed. And I look forward to working with Mr. Ayala on, we've had this discussion on ensuring that our elections continue to be as secure as possible. But I do just want to thank the hard work of the board and the members of the staff who work every day to ensure that our elections are secure. Just thank you.
Thank you, Jake. I see Carlos's hand. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Jake, for saying that. And I agree with you 100%. I've seen no evidence at all that there's been anything. All the people that I've met here have been outstanding, and same with our local board of elections. I'm addressing the perception issue, right? Not the not whether there's. In fact, it's sometimes the appearance can be as bad as the thing itself. But thank you, and I appreciate you pointing that out. I probably should have as well.
Well, I definitely, Vice Chair, thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to say, I was on the board at this time, and a few things to that. First of all, I highly wish that there would have been, during the public comment time, people to speak into their concerns with what the board put forward at that time. Well, actually not the board, but the administration at that time put forward that the board voted on. those comments would have been welcomed and could have made a difference in how this ultimately laid out. And I can also tell you that from my perspective at the time, it seems like this is being considered to be applied broader than I understood that vote to be, whereas this was to be isolated to a backwards investigation, where we're going to invade people's privacy. And it seems like there are those that are concerned that it would be applied very broadly to a citizen wanting to verify that the voter rolls were correct. Which to me, if I would have had any idea that this would have tried to impede that, I would have never voted for it. So I would welcome this board looking at and maybe better defining what that is, or if there was a citizen who wanted to appeal to do that, having this board speak in on that and make a determination of what is an electoral process, which I would love to speak into at that time. So.
Yeah, it seems that per the letter, there was, did I miss someone's name? Before I make a comment, an issue along the lines of defining electoral process. And I don't know if that's, and it was in question as to whether the board has that authority in and of itself, or that is a regulatory, beyond the regulatory fix to define our electoral process when it initiates and when it ends. It seems that per what I read, the electoral process, if you include the outcomes, could go on in perpetuity. So I just, that's just what way I looked at it, because outcomes can exceed the extent of the process itself, which is what we're doing. Yes, Vice Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that, Chair. I think that in that regulation, we defined one thing an electoral process wasn't. So I do believe it's within the board's power to say that. And I believe that there's a process that maybe our Assistant Attorney General or Administrator can talk to about how a citizen could say, this is what I want to do. And that letter or that would come to the board for the board saying, yes or no, that this does or does not meet that, so that we could more narrowly define what it was that we were trying to preclude in that, so that there's less confusion. So I do believe it's within our regulatory power, and within, as a matter of fact, on top of that, our determinative power after the fact, with somebody saying, hey, I challenge that, saying whether what they wanted to do met or did not meet that criteria. And I don't know if Mr. Demarinis or if our AAG, Dan, could speak into that or not.
The Vice Chair is absolutely correct. It's at 33-121. It is a petition for declaratory ruling by the board. And it is an interested person. You do not have to be a registered voter. An interested person can file a petition with the State Board of Elections asking for declaratory ruling on the manner in which the board would apply any of the following to a person or property on facts set forth in the petition. And the very first thing listed is a board regulation. So anyone can petition the board to ask, how would the board act given this regulation on this set of facts?
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask that Mr. Coburn send that regulation around to the board? Thank you.
Dan? Is that a request of Dan to share that regulation or cite it?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Have it sent before this meeting's over.
Exactly. It's nice and easy.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this discussion and the opportunity to consider our efforts going forward. So thank you very much. Any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none. Old business. And truly appreciate it. Regulation 33 11.01.04, firearms and ballot boxes. With regards to this conversation, we've been kicking this down the road quite a bit, although it has been a robust discussion and a lot of learning. I think we need to get some clarification along the lines of definitions with regards to our legal rights to bear arms in the state of Maryland. So this question I do pose to the Attorney General and or Jared, the Administrator, with regards to current law in Maryland in relation to open carry. I am from North Carolina. They have an open carry law. They have trucks. I grew up with it, with gun racks in the back, guns, hunting guns. We see it. We grew up with it, and it was everywhere. Is that currently the law in Maryland?
So your question has a very fine point to it, because currently it is September 28th, 2023. And on October 1st, the new gun law that was passed in the past session is going to take effect. And on October 1st, the answer to your question is no, there is not open carry in Maryland. That a firearm or a handgun has to be concealed on the person. The person has to be permitted, and part of the permitting requires the person to carry it concealed on their person.
Okay. Thank you so very much for that. So I do recall that was some of the concern. I just wanted to clarify that moving forward, because it's, like I said, this has been a very robust conversation with regards to this regulation, and that's been a sticking point and a valid one. I just wanted clarity on that, because we don't want to penalize those who are in the conduct of their rights, their legal rights. But also with regards to that, that question, the free gun zone recognition, if there is a regulation that there is a free gun zone, does that allow those who have concealed carry permits to go across that free gun zone legally carrying?
Are you asking?
I'm asking you as the Attorney General, if there is a posting that this is a free gun zone, do those who have the right to carry, the concealed carry permit, beyond that signage or that posting?
No. So that would be, as currently written, as the regulation is currently proposed to the board. No, a person who has a permit to carry a weapon would not be able to concealed carry within 50 feet, within the no electioneering zone of the drop box.
Okay, thank you. And they in current that is pretty consistent with current laws in relation to the polling place.
Right. The law that goes into effect on October 1st will make it illegal to carry a weapon into a polling place.
Now, with regards to this regulation, we had some issues with regards to the language on possession. So we were clear that possession, in order to brandish, you had to possess. And to move this forward, I'm wondering if we can look at the language and make it more finite and look at brandishing and or carrying a firearm beyond during at a drop box or polling place location. So here is specifically drop box. I know that there was some sticking points on the language with regards to openly possessed or possessing, but the brandishing and or carrying, it seems to be the brandishing is more menacing, considering what people are there to do. So not only to protect the voters, but also the campaign workers. Is there is there any discussion around those types of concepts? Yeah, Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Herbert, if I can just ask, it's been a little while since I've done this, but as I read this, it says an individual shall not visibly possess, carry, or brandish a firearm. Visibly applies to all three of those, correct? So it's visibly possess, visibly carry, visibly brandish a firearm. Is that like, I feel like I'm back in elementary school here, but does the visibly, maybe it's algebra, does the visibly apply to all three of those terms, or does visibly just apply to possess?
It's Miss Millicent's suggestion. I'll let her respond.
Yeah, no,
All right.
originally I wrote it so visibly only applied to, I think it was possess. And it got rearranged, so I agree right now. It's hard to parse it. It does look like it applies to all.
Okay. Carlos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we amend it so that it says, just to clarify, and there's no confusion, an individual shall not visibly possess, visibly carry, or brandish?
I would second, if that's a motion, I would second that motion.
Okay. I move that.
It has been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous vote. Thank you very much for that. With that being said, with that amendment, we are okay. So that with that amendment, is there a motion to pass the regulation with the amended language? Yes, Jake.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to motion that we pass the regulation with that amended language.
It has been properly motioned. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been properly seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, it's unanimous.
Okay, and to be sure, because in terms of amendment, it's the document on my screen right now that I have open. I have as F1 currently reads, except as provided in F2 of this regulation, an individual shall not visibly possess, visibly carry, or brandish a firearm within the electioneering's boundary set forth of Section D of this regulation. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you also very, very much. And
I
there is going to be.
I just want you. This was just for post. This is going to now go out and for comment and everything else. So we will get more comments back. So just to want to make sure that like it was not final or anything like that. So
no. And we're excited about that. So please let your constituencies know about this regulation for their comment on it. So that would be great for that feedback. Also now moving on to regulation 33.11.05.04, canvass of ballots. Any discussion along this here?
I just wanted to bring the board's attention to the final, let me pull it up, sorry, to D, 04, all the way down at the bottom D. Last board meeting, the rest of the regulation was proposed and follow-up was requested to ensure that this particular regulation specified that if an absentee ballot was received after a provisional ballot or another absentee ballot, that the ballot would be rejected. And so that clarification is the italicized language in 04D. Did Michael disappear?
I think
We might
we
have
just
lost him.
lost the
Yeah.
chairman.
I'm here. I apologize.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
You missed all the hands, Michael.
all right, Bill. Sorry about that. Bill?
Yeah, I had a very, very easy question. Well, it could be difficult, but I hope it's easy. In C, the local board shall count the first ballot the voter cast. Can you define cast for me?
Let's see where I'm going.
I understand first ballot received because we're time date stamping.
Right.
I understand a date on an oath. That makes sense to me. I'm trying to understand how we would ascertain cast.
So the provisional ballot would be, cast would be the day that we received it. And the absentee ballot would be the day that I presume, and Dan may need to help me with this, is the day that it was either mailed or signed. Dan, do you have any?
So under the definition, by the way, a vote means to cast a ballot that is counted. So
Oh,
that's what it's in the election law article.
I remember having a lot of discussions on this, and forgive me, but I believe at the last meeting, I believe board member Millicent brought this up and we had a discussion about what it means to cast a ballot and whether cast is at the moment it's signed or the moment it's postmarked. And I believe we had settled on signed because postmarked is not necessarily in line with when the ballot was filled out. So I believe I don't want to step on anyone's toes. So yeah, board member Millicent, if you want to take this over.
Yes, I remember when the law on which this is, when the legislation on which this is based was passed, and I've even confirmed with Senator Kagan, who was the sponsor. The intent of this was simply count the first ballot from the individual that the local board determines is legally sufficient and reject any other ballot. And this regulation goes into looking at the date on the oath and all these complicated things. You can end up with some circumstances that are very ambiguous. If you get something dated, October 28th, signed October 28th, and then you've processed it, and then another one comes in signed October 26th, you can't go back and take the other one. There's just a lot of extra wording in here. It really should be, again, what the original was, which is the first legally sufficient ballot received. So it's not when the person signed it, it's when it gets to the local board. And, as you say, it gets date and time stamped. And there's just so many ambiguities if you try to do it some other way. And this, rejected if you get more than one ballot in the same envelope. That was also in the bill. But election law 11-303.2.4 is very straightforward on this. And again, based on Senator Kagan's bill, and I have, confirmed with her what her intent was. So I think the regulation should match what's in the law.
so I think that just to kind of give our reasoning in terms of setting out the specific instances and obviously defer to the board and how they want to move forward is in practice at the local board level, it's tough to implement that first legally sufficient without giving some more specific guidance. They're in the midst of a very, very long and tedious process with ballots, everywhere. And so this helps to clarify and take away any ambiguity that they might have in which ballot they should count and to account for kind of every situation and make sure that it's consistent along all of the local boards and all of the voters. So the intent was most definitely not to do anything counter to the legislation, quite the opposite. It was to really try to hammer out what that legally sufficient is so that our local boards have something a little bit more tangible that they can follow in determining which ballots should be counted.
Thank you, Melissa and Vice Chair.
Much. And Janet, thank you so much for your thoughtful pursuit of this. Appreciate that. So I had questions around this last night, and actually as well, just before Senator Kagan was getting on a plane to leave for Texas, we spent an hour on the phone last night because I was trying to understand her intent. And I agreed with her intent where she said she doesn't want to give somebody, and I believe this is correct, to give the opportunity to change their vote. So let's say you send your mail-in ballot in a week before the election, a day before the election, sometime before the election, and you signed that oath, you mailed it in. And then you decide, wow, this and all has now changed my mind. I'm going to go vote provisionally, and that my ballot doesn't get received till after that now. So now my provisional ballot is a changed vote. It's different because of whatever factor. No one else got to change their vote. So your first vote should count. And I agree with that. So to me, the cast needs to go back to the signed oath, not to date received, because it is possible that you would mail it 2 days before an election. You decide you've changed your mind. You show up and vote provisionally. Now your provisional ballot is actually the first one received. And it could potentially change the vote you did a day or two earlier. So to me, it has to go back to not allow someone to effectively change their vote or give them a reason to. If somebody had voted, for instance, before the election or just before the election, and then they realize they want to change their vote, to say, well, I'm just going to go in now and vote provisionally, which will effectively give me this change in my vote. And we want to discourage or disallow that by counting the first vote that they cast, which I don't know how you do that. To Melissa's point, I think it was Melissa that made that point, with the local boards, you have to give them clear direction. So the clear direction would be the first signed oath.
So I just want to make note of this too. I'm sorry, Board Member Weissman here, just to clarify too. We also need to make sure we have clear guidance, because we're also going to be starting the canvass early again. Remember, 8 days early, because that was a part of the law. So we have to make sure that, as they get it and it's legally sufficient, they have to have clear guidance so that they know this is the one that is the correct one. This is the one we're going to count because this was the first one we received, and move forward with it. So just to I just wanted to amplify the Vice Chair's point there, and why the locals kind of need this from Ms. Darcy as well. So just kind of.
Jake?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, what the Vice Chair just said makes a lot of sense. And looking at the legislation, count the first ballot from the individual that the local board determines is legally sufficient. I guess my question would be procedurally, and I'm not as well versed as some of the others here, but if a board, let's go for a longer period, if the board receives a ballot, well, I guess my question is, do the local boards count ballots by date? I guess what I'm thinking is, if I sent in 2 mail-in ballots and one of them is dated January 1st and the other one is dated January 4th, right? I'm pulling dates, obviously. And the board, how do we know that the board will count the one that had the oath sworn on January 1st if they have potentially already opened the one on January 4th? I guess that's the procedure technical part I'm trying to understand, because what the Vice Chair is saying makes sense, and I think aligns with the legislation. I'm just trying to think how that works in practical sense, because I know once they open the envelope and separate the two, there is no more, connection.
Did you want me to answer that? Or?
Whoever knows.
Well, I guess so. As they come in, so even though there might be different dates on it, right? Because let's just say you put the one on the 1st in the mail, right? And then subsequently put the second one in the Dropbox, and the Dropbox comes into the locals first. If it's a part of the canvas and they've already pulled it apart, the one that's the 4th, because it arrived earlier, right, was the first ballot that was cast that was legally sufficient to received by the local boards, right? And therefore that would be canvassed.
Even though that one might have been voted, as it were, second.
But the local boards didn't know that because it came in afterwards, right? So we want to make sure that when the local boards receive a legally sufficient ballot, right, and they've checked, make sure that that person has not had any other ballots received by that individual, right? That therefore that they can process that in a timely fashion, because otherwise what you don't want to have is basically everyone not processing ballots, right? Like we want to process them as they come in. So, as they come in and go through it. So having the other portion too is, it gets checked into MD voters. And if the person has been issued a new ballot, the other one, there's other checks along the line here as well to make sure that a person is not receiving 2 ballots. But what you want to have is, if a person gives us a legally sufficient, mail-in ballot and it is received, and then if they subsequently go to the polls and, they wanted to vote provisionally, in that case there, because the provisional ballot canvass is after the fact, right? All those procedures, and that it would be counted, it would already be in the system as that the person has been voted and been counted, then the local boards would reject it. If, for example, you have then both the provisional and the mail-in ballot being received at the same time, but the mail-in ballot has an earlier date, that was the first ballot that was legal, that has been cast by the voter, so that they would count that one as the legally sufficient one and reject the provisional ballot because that was subsequent, because they're at the exact same time, and we can then check all the dates. So
Thank you.
Thank
you, Jerry.
There's other things there, and that's why this is kind of needed to help move this along here.
Yeah, and Vice, I appreciate it. And Vice
Another
Chair,
thing that clear this up. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for Jake too, and for anyone else trying to understand that when a ballot comes in, it gets checked into MD voters, but it is not separated until the canvass. So that ballot is part of the envelope. It is not open. They're not allowed to open it until it reaches the canvass. So there is still opportunity up and until it is canvassed. When it's canvassed and that team, 2-person bipartisan team, opens them up, they separate the envelope from the vote at that time, turn the ballot, the envelope upside down. Now it has been separated. So up until that time, there's still the opportunity to pull and verify and get the right one. Once it has been canvassed, now the other rule would take into effect that says, hey, that's already been counted. Everything else now gets rejected.
And essentially the way the reg is written, the first part of it applies while everything's sitting in that bucket where things can still be pulled in, taken out, put back in, and things sorted out next to each other. And then D will cover the situation where another ballot has already been canvassed.
So there is a 2-pronged resolution for this, for the potential of any errors.
Yes.
Chairman.
All right. Jay?
Thank you. How does this work with internet delivered mail-in ballots, which don't have the signature, envelope? They don't have the signature on the outside, and so there's no, aside from the postmark, there is no date without opening the envelope, and those are all put in the pile as they're received. How does that get managed under this reg?
Still the same, because there's a date inside the envelope. So you just, you'd get an alert in the system, you pull out all the ballots, you put them in a group of ballots, and then when it comes time to canvass, you would open them.
Ms. Dorsey, not to interrupt, but just so I understand, when we're referring to ballots, are we referring to ballots still with the signature page affixed to it?
Yes, it would be in a sealed envelope. Right, the signature would be in the envelope. Any other ballot, whether it be a provisional or another mail-in ballot or a web delivery ballot, would be in a sealed envelope. And then during canvass, all of those ballots would be put together, and the recommendation would be made as to which ballot to count based on this regulation. So the outcome's still the same. It's just they
Typically be opened by the LBE, by the board members, because
Right.
there's notes on the inside.
Yep.
All right. Any other discussion on this? Yes, Vice Chair?
I
I'm
still
sorry.
have my question on this of how we're defining vote in C cast. And I guess I'm looking to define it more narrowly as what cast is, unless we have a legal definition to make sure it's the first ballot that they signed somehow.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that is, first of all, in passing this regulation, this board can make that finding that is how it is interpreting it when it passes this regulation. But it would have to be C, the C provision in this regulation would have to be read consistently with B. They could not have different standards. And since B, the signature is the timing point for cast, then C also, the signature on the provisional ballot is the timing point for when it's cast.
Carlos, did you have something before I go to Jay? I know you had your hand up earlier. Jake, I saw you, but I saw Carlos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there's a lot of understandable good reasons why someone might have voted twice, once by mail, once provisional. I understand that there might be people who are cognitively challenged. Maybe they forgot. That might apply to me. Probably already does. But I can see why that could happen. There could also be some more nefarious reasons why someone might have sent in a ballot for someone else, and then that person goes in to vote. And if that person or maybe that person mails in their ballot also, but it arrives after the first one. My question is this: do we do any sort of notification? So 2 ballots come in from Carlos Ayala. Is there anything that I would get back from the Board of Elections that would say, "Hey, FYI, we received 2 ballots from you, and we're using the ballot that was dated on this date"?
We do a double voter check of all the, if there's 2 voting credits for an individual. And once we go through all that, we then make sure how the double voting credits came about. We investigate the matter. And then at the end of it, we give our report over to the state prosecutor's office, and they then make the determination on whether or not to prosecute those cases.
Got it. Is there any sort of notification to the person who voted?
I mean, I know there's notification to folks when their vote by mail ballot comes into the local board. It gets scanned, and you can check your status on the state board website. Is that what you're referring to?
But I think I think his question is anything from the state board sent out or the prosecutor's office sent out to the actual voter of record.
I don't believe we have any sort of, not before an election is certified at that point, but we can double check.
I'd be curious about that. And if there's not any sort of notification, I'd encourage us to consider that. I certainly would want to know that if I sent in a ballot, if it didn't get counted because another ballot had already been submitted in my name, I would want to know that. I would want to know that I hadn't been disenfranchised or that I have been disenfranchised. Thank you.
Appreciate
So
that.
only opposed to that, only it goes to the state prosecutor. Probably at that point there, the state prosecutor's office would probably inform the individual, because during our research, there's for all various reasons why a person may have the 2 voting credits. And remember, voting credits is actually a vote cast, not just an attempt. So that's the definition of a vote. The ballot that was cast, that was counted.
All right. Thank you, Jared. Jake?
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I'll try to keep it quick just because I know once we start talking about voter fraud, which is an incredibly rare sort of thing, I mean, infinitesimal. I guess what I'm trying to understand, and Ms. Dorsey, if you can just clarify for me, it is, in your estimation, easier for election staff to go by date cast than by date received?
Yes.
Can you just explain to me why that is?
Sure, because received is not quite as solid of a date as the date signed, for various USPS reasons that I could probably talk about for way too long.
I love the USPS.
As do we. We are very grateful for them. But there's all kinds of different types of delivery and things of that nature. We have now new legislation where ballots need to be processed within 3 days. But if they don't have a postmark on them, and we're processing ballots, right, there's a potential that they have sat for a day or two. When they go into the system, they get another date that we refer to as the received date in our MD voter system. And so the oath language was just a much more clear-cut kind of date to attribute it to.
Gotcha. Okay. And from an expeditious standpoint, from a timing standpoint, does that add a lot to the burden of the local election workers looking at that rather than just when they get it either through USPS or the Dropbox?
No, I would say to the contrary. It would be easier to look at that oath date than to try to recreate for each ballot the date that they actually put their hands on the ballot.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Janet?
I'm looking at my notes and I have several different things written down on the definition of cast. The day the local board gets it, the day it was counted. Please clarify sort of once and for all so I know which one to underline and which one to cross out.
The day the oath associated with the ballot was signed for provisional.
Okay. Okay.
So it is a signature date opposed to date stamped. All right. Any further discussion? Yes, go ahead. Who?
I guess that applies to votes cast in person on election day when you sign your voter authorization card and you date it. That is the date you cast your vote, but that's election day.
I guess it would be sort of that. All right. Any issue with that clarification?
Mr. Chairman, your sound is blipping out.
I was worried that was me. That's good to know.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Chair, you're a slow motion robot.
All right, so as it stands now, I didn't hear an amendment proposed. This is on for. Am I frozen again?
You were, but I think you're back now.
Am I frozen?
And you sped up, so you're
Am I back now?
yes.
What happened?
No, you're
We're
good
good.
now.
Good.
Okay, is there this? Okay. So is there a motion? This was before us for passage. Only on approving the language as is. Jake?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I guess I'd like to motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second that based on the Assistant Attorney General's claim and showing that cast must be equivalent to what is in B above it. So I will second that.
Any discussion? Motion has been properly seconded. All in favor, please show by raising your hand. All right, 4 is recognized for, voted in favor. That provision passes. Thank you very much. Discussion on approval of State Board of Election bylaws. Now, with this, folks, I know we've had a long day and we have more to do, and I don't want to short circuit us. But with this, and I think we could have a lot more robust discussion along the lines of our bylaws if we had those recommendations and or suggestions in writing. So if you would, and please present or pass along to the state administrator your recommendations, edits and or updates to the bylaws, your recommendations to the bylaws to be shared with the members prior to our next meeting. We will then, Jake, go ahead.
Is that also for the delegation of duties, Mr. Chairman?
I'm not seeing that on the record, but
we had when we first put this on the agenda, we had discussed also reviewing the delegation of duties.
Okay, well, we'll add that for the agenda to be discussed. I don't want to mix the two. I'd like to present just as it reads now, our SBE bylaws. So, please put those forward for all of us to review, and we should come prepared to accept or deny those recommendations for next month. Okay, I know we've had some discussions around this, but I'd like to get it a little bit more organized and allow for us to review and discuss, and so we can move forward. All right, with amending or keeping them as they are. Okay, we good with that? That mode of operandi? All right. All right, thank you very much. And moving on to new business. Seeing that there is none, I'd like to remind folks to please submit any questions or comments or issues you'd like to bring forward to the state administrator or myself to be added to the agenda for next month. All right, as new business. And that could be also comments from the public as well, presented to each of us. All right. Now, with regards to are there any disclosure of campaign contributions? None? Seeing none? Okay, great. Now, our next meeting, typically we're moving into for October, would be the third Thursday.
So it would be the last Thursday, because the third Thursday is the 19th, and that's the biannual. So we would have one on the
19th.
The 19th is the biannual conference. So with that's already there, but the 26th, the last Thursday of the month. So yes.
Mr. Chair, I will be traveling and not be in town the 26th. If you have quorum, you could still, of course, meet, but I will be on an airplane coming back from Chicago.
Got you. Do you know about what time you'll hit the ground? It's fine. It's fine.
Not during,
Janet?
not during business hours. I won't be available
Okay.
on the 26th.
Okay.
I won't be available till 8 o'clock or so.
All right. Janet, you had a question?
Well, I was going to ask, I'm amenable to other days that week if Mr. Velt can't make it, but I was going to ask if we could have our start time adjusted a little bit, if not 2 o'clock, maybe 1:30. But
does anyone else have a conflict with that date? Thank you, Janet. Does anyone else have a conflict with that date? Thank you, Bill. I think we'll have a quorum with 4, and I don't think 1:30 will be a problem. Now, Bill, understand you still be able to submit your recommendations for the bylaws and whatnot, and we'll respect them as such. Now, you just may not be here to vote on them, but we'll respect your input significantly. Jay.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Two things, just as a clarification. My understanding is while we can discuss the bylaws change next month, we won't be able to vote on them till the month after. That getting the nod from Mr. Griffin. And I just wanted to ask before Bill is going to one of my favorite cities, but do we have anything urgent just that we already know about on the agenda that the vice chair's absence would be an issue of? I just want to make sure we're not.
Right now, no. It's going to be more afterwards. It's the November meetings that will have the polling place plans and the early voting sites that the board will need to decide on. And at which point here, just because the idea of the November 1/December with the holidays and that wanting to be in person, if we can set that date as well, that would be great. We appreciate it.
And I will caution, because this will be the first time for this board, you will have quorum. You can meet as a 4-member board. You will need a unanimous vote to pass things at that, because you will still need 4 votes to pass things.
Right, but we still can vote. But we just need a unanimous vote. All right, thank you very much for that clarification, Dan. Carlos, did I see your hand, or you good? All right, so we're good to move forward with the October 26th. We wish you safe travels, Bill. And with that, and we will consider Janet's recommendation or request for 1:30 start time. Thank you very much, Janet, for that. And now with that being set, we are moving to closed session.
Wait, did you want to set the December meeting? So, I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't hear you say set the December meeting. I thought you said we would do that in October, but I got you. Not a problem. Looking at what does folks, the 13th or I don't want to get it too close to Christmas, but I'm looking at the 13th, the middle of the month. What's folks think about that? Go ahead, Dan.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Do we have a date for November, or do we not meet in November?
Well, it's possible just due to the holidays and coming off of the 2 dates in October, the biannual and the and so we want to look at December. And if push comes to shove, we're looking at and we need to we can set a time in November for during October's meeting if there's pressing issues or concerns. But giving folks that time. December 13th, what's that look like for folks? We're good to go with that one. Now, with that being said, I mean,
the 13th or the 14th, Mr. Chair? Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, 14th. Thank you very much for that clarification. It's Thursday, the 14th. Just trying to get the middle of the month. I actually got the middle of the week too. All right. Does 1:30 or 2 work for folks, or you're good for the? I like the 1:30 as well.
So this will be the 14th at 1:30 in person.
Yes, sir. All right, give me one second. Yes, Janet, go ahead.
I'd just say in general, we appreciate getting as many materials for meeting in advance as possible. And that means more than a couple days because there's a lot to go through and pay attention to. So not trying to put an extra burden on anyone, but to the extent meeting materials, the staff has made them ready to go, sooner is always welcome.
Sure. Make sure.
Right. Duly noted. I appreciate that, Janet. With that being said, we are now moving to our closed meeting. And in doing so, the board will now consider whether, the closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice as permitted by section 3-305B7 of the general provisions article. Meeting in closed session would allow the members of the board to seek and obtain legal advice with board counsel without waiver of the attorney-client privilege. We will also consult with staff and legal counsel about pending or potential litigation as permitted by section 3-305B8 of the general provisions article. We will also be discussing the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or the performance evaluation of an appointee, employees, or officials over whom we have jurisdiction as permitted by 3-305B1I of the general provisions article. The chair is open to entertain a motion to meet in closed session.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we go into closed session for the purpose of discussing those, and then I assume adjourn from closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, show your hands. The motion having passed, the board will meet in closed session in accordance with the exceptions B1, B7, and B8 of section 3-305 of the Open Meetings Act. And with that being said, folks, we're going to take you need about 10 minutes? 10 minutes good? 5, 10 minutes? What? 10 minutes?